You made it. Another night, another quiet moment to slip beneath the noise. Picture this, you're lying here in the dark, and somewhere in the space between your thoughts, something vast and interconnected hums just beyond the reach of your ordinary awareness. Your brain feels heavy against the pillow, neurons firing in patterns that science can map but never quite explain. Yet what if the very consciousness experiencing this moment isn't actually contained within the 3 pounds of tissue resting in your skull? What if your awareness extends far beyond the boundaries of bone and flesh, reaching into quantum fields that connect you to everything that ever was or will be? Let's be honest, you probably won't make it to the end. Sleep always wins. But tonight, before you drift away, we're going to explore one of the most quietly radical ideas in modern consciousness research, that your brain might be less like a computer generating awareness and more like a radio, tuning into a consciousness that already exists everywhere. Take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if this kind of quiet weirdness feels like home. Then, if you're still here, tell me, where are you listening from, and what time is it for you? Now, soften the lights, maybe turn on a fan or let a candle flicker somewhere nearby, and let's begin. You settle deeper into this moment, and already you can feel the edges of ordinary thinking beginning to blur. Mainstream neuroscience has spent decades mapping the brain, identifying regions responsible for memory, emotion, language, and decision-making. The prevailing view suggests that consciousness emerges from complex neural networks, like steam rising from boiling water. Your thoughts, your sense of self, your very experience of being you, all of it supposedly generated by electrochemical processes firing across synapses in predictable patterns. But here's where things get interesting. Quantum physicists have discovered that, at the smallest scales of reality, particles exist in states of superposition, simultaneously occupying multiple possibilities until observed. Some researchers now propose that consciousness itself might operate according to quantum principles, with your awareness existing in a field of infinite potential that your brain simply accesses rather than creates. Dr. Stuart Hameroff and Sir Roger Penrose have suggested that microtubules within neurons might serve as quantum processors, allowing consciousness to tap into what they call the orchestrated objective reduction of quantum possibilities. It sounds like science fiction, but the mathematics are surprisingly elegant. You breathe slowly, and in that breath, you might be participating in something far more mysterious than oxygen exchange. Ancient traditions have long held that consciousness extends beyond the physical body. Hindu philosophy speaks of the Akashic records, a cosmic library where all thoughts, experiences, and knowledge are stored in an eternal field of consciousness. Buddhist teachings describe the interconnectedness of all minds through what they call the Buddha nature, a fundamental awareness that underlies all individual experience. These aren't just poetic metaphors. They're descriptions of a reality where your consciousness is both uniquely yours and universally shared. Some modern researchers dismiss these ideas entirely, arguing that consciousness is nothing more than an emergent property of sufficiently complex neural networks. Others find themselves drawn to the possibility that ancient wisdom traditions might have intuited something about the nature of mind that science is only beginning to rediscover. The mystery deepens when you consider that no one has ever successfully explained how subjective experience arises from objective matter. This is what philosophers call the hard problem of consciousness, the gap between neural activity and the felt sense of being aware. Your thoughts drift now like autumn leaves on still water, each one connected to currents you can't quite see. In the 1990s, researchers began studying what they called non-local consciousness instances, where awareness seemed to operate beyond the confines of the individual brain. Remote viewing experiments, where participants accurately described distant locations they'd never seen, suggested that consciousness might not be as locally bound as previously assumed. The Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Laboratory spent decades documenting cases where human intention appeared to influence random number generators and other physical systems at a distance. While skeptics questioned the methodology, the consistency of results across multiple laboratories created what some called a quiet revolution in consciousness research. You shift slightly, feeling the weight of your body against the mattress, yet simultaneously sensing something weightless and expansive about your awareness itself. Fringe researchers have proposed even more radical possibilities. Some suggest that consciousness exists as a fundamental field, like gravity or electromagnetism, with individual brains serving as receivers tuned to different frequencies of this universal awareness. Others explore the idea that quantum entanglement might allow consciousness to transcend space and time, connecting minds across vast distances in ways that classical physics cannot explain. The controversial work of researchers like Dean Radin has documented statistical anomalies in human perception that seem to violate our understanding of causality. People responding to stimuli before they're presented, as if consciousness could somehow reach backward through time. Scientists remain divided on these findings. Some argue that the effects, while statistically significant, are too small to be meaningful. Others suggest that even tiny violations of classical physics might point toward revolutionary new understandings of consciousness and reality. The question lingers in the space between certainty and wonder. If consciousness can operate beyond the brain, what does that mean for your sense of individual identity? The room around you seems to breathe with possibility as you consider how this might change everything you thought you knew about being human. If consciousness exists as a field rather than a product of neural activity, then death might not be the end of awareness, but simply a change in reception. Near-death experiences, reported across cultures and throughout history, often describe encounters with deceased relatives, visions of otherworldly realms, and a sense of universal connection that transcends individual identity. Mainstream medicine typically attributes these experiences to oxygen deprivation or neurochemical changes in the dying brain, but researchers studying consciousness as a quantum field suggest these experiences might represent genuine glimpses into non-local awareness consciousness temporarily freed from the filtering constraints of physical neural networks. The work of Dr. Pim van Lommel with cardiac arrest patients has documented cases where individuals reported accurate perceptions of events occurring during periods when their brains showed no measurable activity. You feel your breathing slow, each exhale releasing you further into this exploration of what it means to be aware. Ancient shamanic traditions speak of consciousness as a traveler, capable of journeying beyond the physical body to gather information and healing from other realms of existence. Modern practitioners of astral projection claim similar abilities, describing experiences of floating above their sleeping bodies and exploring distant locations. While neuroscience might explain these as lucid dreams or hallucinations, some researchers wonder if they represent genuine instances of consciousness operating independently of brain activity. The mystery deepens when you consider documented cases of shared dreaming, where multiple individuals report identical dream experiences without prior communication. If consciousness is truly generated by individual brains, such synchronicities should be impossible. Yet they occur with enough frequency to suggest that awareness might indeed operate through channels that science has yet to fully map. Some believe these experiences offer glimpses into the true nature of consciousness as a unified field. Others dismiss them as coincidence or wishful thinking. The question remains tantalizingly open. What would it mean if your awareness could genuinely transcend the boundaries of your skull? You sink deeper into contemplation, feeling the edges of your individual self becoming more fluid, more permeable to possibilities that daylight logic might dismiss. Quantum mechanics has revealed that observation itself plays a fundamental role in determining reality at the subatomic level. The famous double-slit experiment demonstrates that particles behave differently when observed, suggesting that consciousness might not merely witness reality but actively participate in its creation. Some interpretations of quantum theory propose that consciousness collapses quantum wave functions, transforming infinite possibilities into concrete experiences. If this is true, then your awareness isn't just passively receiving a pre-existing reality, it's actively participating in the ongoing creation of the universe itself. The implications ripple outward like stones dropped in still water. If consciousness shapes reality through observation, then collective human awareness might influence global events in ways we're only beginning to understand. The Global Consciousness Project has spent decades monitoring random number generators around the world, documenting statistical anomalies that correlate with major global events. During moments of intense collective focus, natural disasters, terrorist attacks, significant cultural celebrations, the normally random outputs of these devices show patterns that shouldn't exist. If consciousness had no influence on physical systems, mainstream scientists often critique these findings, arguing that the statistical effects are too small or that the correlations might be coincidental. But proponents suggest that even subtle influences of consciousness on matter could accumulate over time, potentially affecting everything from weather patterns to social movements. The idea that your thoughts might contribute to a global field of awareness that influences physical reality sounds like fantasy. Yet the mathematical models supporting it are surprisingly robust. You breathe into this possibility, feeling simultaneously insignificant and cosmically connected. Some researchers propose that consciousness operates through what they call morphic fields, invisible structures that carry information and influence across space and time. Rupert Sheldrake's controversial theory of morphic resonance suggests that when enough individuals learn a new skill or behavior, it becomes easier for others to acquire the same ability, as if knowledge itself propagates through non-physical channels. Critics dismiss this as pseudoscience, but the theory offers elegant explanations for phenomena that conventional science struggles to address. Others wonder if these ideas might bridge the gap between ancient spiritual teachings and modern scientific understanding, revealing consciousness as both deeply personal and fundamentally universal. Your awareness expands now, like ripples spreading across the surface of a cosmic pond, each thought connected to currents that flow far beyond your individual mind. The study of meditation has revealed that contemplative practices can produce measurable changes in brain structure and function, but they also seem to access states of consciousness that transcend ordinary neural activity. Advanced meditators report experiences of pure awareness consciousness without content, a sense of being that exists independent of thoughts, emotions, or sensory input. Neuroscientists studying these states find decreased activity in the default mode network, the brain regions associated with self-referential thinking and the sense of individual identity. Yet paradoxically, meditators describe these moments as the most vivid and real experiences of their lives. If consciousness is generated by brain activity, how can the reduction of neural firing lead to expanded awareness? Some researchers suggest that the brain might function more like a reducing valve than a generator, filtering a vast field of consciousness down to the narrow stream of individual experience. Aldous Huxley proposed this idea decades ago, drawing on both mystical traditions and emerging neuroscience to suggest that ordinary consciousness represents a tiny fraction of available awareness. Psychedelic research has provided additional evidence for this perspective. Studies with psilocybin, LSD, and DMT consistently show that these substances reduce activity in the brain's default mode network while producing experiences of expanded consciousness, ego dissolution, and connection to universal awareness. Participants often describe encountering intelligent entities, accessing information they couldn't have known through normal means, and experiencing a sense of cosmic unity that feels more real than ordinary reality. Mainstream psychiatry is beginning to acknowledge the therapeutic potential of these experiences, but the implications for our understanding of consciousness remain largely unexplored. If reducing brain activity can expand awareness, what does this suggest about the relationship between mind and matter? The question hovers in the space between scientific materialism and mystical insight, inviting you to consider possibilities that challenge everything you thought you knew about the nature of your own mind. Some believe these experiences offer direct access to the quantum field of consciousness that underlies all reality. Others argue they're simply interesting alterations of brain chemistry with no broader implications. The mystery persists, as beautiful and elusive as the awareness contemplating it. You rest now in the quiet space between certainty and wonder, feeling your consciousness expand and contract like breathing itself, sometimes focused and individual, sometimes vast and interconnected. The field of consciousness studies has documented numerous cases of what researchers call veridical near-death experiences, instances where individuals report accurate perceptions of events occurring during periods of cardiac arrest when brain activity is undetectable. Dr. Bruce Grayson's decades of research have catalogued cases where patients accurately described conversations in distant hospital rooms, identified objects placed in locations they couldn't possibly have seen, and reported encounters with deceased relatives who conveyed previously unknown information that was later verified. If consciousness is produced by brain activity, these experiences should be impossible, yet they occur with sufficient frequency and consistency to suggest that awareness might indeed operate independently of neural function. The implications extend far beyond individual survival of death, pointing toward a model of consciousness that transcends the boundaries of space, time, and individual identity. You feel your breathing deepen, each inhalation drawing you further into this exploration of what it means to be aware in a universe that might be far more conscious than we've ever imagined. Fringe researchers have proposed that consciousness might exist as a fundamental property of reality, like mass or electric charge. This view, known as panpsychism, suggests that all matter possesses some degree of awareness, with complex systems like brains serving as amplifiers and organizers of this universal consciousness rather than generators of awareness from unconscious matter. The idea sounds radical to modern ears, but it was widely accepted by philosophers throughout history, from ancient Greek thinkers to contemporary scholars like David Chalmers and Galen Strawson. If consciousness is indeed fundamental, then your awareness isn't an accident of evolution, but an expression of the universe, coming to know itself through countless individual perspectives. Some quantum physicists have suggested that consciousness might play a role in the collapse of quantum wave functions, transforming possibilities into actualities through the act of observation. This interpretation implies that awareness doesn't just witness reality, but actively participates in its creation, making every conscious being a co-creator of the universe itself. The mathematics supporting these ideas are complex and controversial, but they offer a framework for understanding consciousness that bridges the gap between scientific materialism and spiritual insight. Critics argue that these theories are unfalsifiable and therefore unscientific, while proponents suggest they're necessary to explain phenomena that conventional neuroscience cannot address. The debate continues in academic journals and research laboratories, but for you, lying here in the quiet darkness, the question becomes more personal. What would it mean if your consciousness truly extends beyond the boundaries of your brain? The darkness around you seems alive with potential as you consider how this understanding might transform your relationship with sleep, dreams, and the vast unconscious realms that open each night. If consciousness exists as a field rather than a product of neural activity, then sleep might not represent a shutdown of awareness, but a shift in reception, your individual consciousness tuning into different frequencies of the universal field. Dreams, rather than being random neural firings or memory consolidation, might represent genuine explorations of non-local consciousness, journeys into realms of awareness that exist beyond the constraints of physical space and time. Carl Jung proposed that dreams connect us to what he called the collective unconscious, a shared repository of archetypal images and experiences that transcends individual psychology. Modern research has documented instances of precognitive dreams where individuals accurately dream of future events, and telepathic dreams where dreamers report experiences that correspond to distant events they couldn't have known through normal means. If consciousness operates according to quantum principles, these phenomena might represent natural expressions of awareness freed from the filtering constraints of waking neural activity. You feel yourself drifting toward sleep, yet simultaneously expanding into something larger than your individual mind. Some researchers suggest that sleep serves as a natural portal to non-local consciousness, allowing awareness to access information and experiences beyond the reach of ordinary perception. The phenomenon of lucid dreaming, where individuals become conscious within the dream state, might represent a middle ground between local and non-local awareness consciousness that maintains individual identity while exploring expanded realms of possibility. Ancient traditions speak of dream yoga and other practices designed to cultivate awareness during sleep, treating dreams not as meaningless mental activity but as opportunities for spiritual exploration and growth. The Tibetan Book of the Dead describes the dream state as preparation for the journey of consciousness after death, suggesting that learning to navigate non-ordinary states of awareness during life prepares the soul for its ultimate transition. Modern sleep research has documented the complex neurochemical changes that occur during different stages of sleep, but the subjective experience of dreaming remains largely mysterious. Some believe dreams offer glimpses into the true nature of consciousness as a field of infinite possibility. Others argue they're simply the brain's way of processing information and maintaining psychological balance. The question lingers in the space between sleep and waking. What if your dreams are more real than you've ever imagined? Your body grows heavy now, consciousness beginning its nightly journey into realms that daylight logic cannot map, yet your awareness of this exploration seems to expand rather than contract. The study of shared dreaming has documented cases where multiple individuals report identical dream experiences without prior communication, suggesting that consciousness might indeed operate through channels that transcend individual neural networks. Research into dream telepathy, conducted at laboratories like the Maimonides Medical Center, has produced statistically significant results showing that dreamers can sometimes access information transmitted by distant individuals during sleep, while mainstream science often dismisses these findings as coincidental or methodologically flawed. The consistency of results across multiple studies suggests that consciousness during sleep might operate according to principles that conventional neuroscience has yet to understand. If awareness can transcend the boundaries of individual brains during dreams, what does this suggest about the nature of consciousness itself? You feel yourself suspended between waking and sleeping, individual and universal, as if your awareness were a wave on an infinite ocean of consciousness. Some traditions describe what they call dream sharing or mutual dreaming, where advanced practitioners can meet and interact in shared dream spaces. While this might sound like fantasy, research into lucid dreaming has documented cases where multiple lucid dreamers report similar experiences during the same time periods. The mechanisms underlying these phenomena remain mysterious, but they point toward possibilities that challenge our fundamental assumptions about the nature of mind and reality. If consciousness exists as a field that individual brains access rather than generate, then sleep might represent a natural state where awareness can more easily transcend the boundaries of individual identity. The implications ripple through everything we think we know about death, survival, and the ultimate nature of human existence. Some researchers propose that consciousness might persist after brain death, continuing to exist in the quantum field that underlies all reality. Others suggest that individual awareness might merge back into universal consciousness, like waves returning to the ocean from which they arose. The mystery deepens when you consider documented cases of reincarnation memories, where young children report detailed knowledge of previous lives that can be independently verified. If consciousness is generated by brain activity, these memories should be impossible, yet researchers like Dr. Ian Stevenson have catalogued thousands of such cases, creating a body of evidence that challenges materialist assumptions about the nature of mind and identity. Some believe these cases provide evidence for the survival of individual consciousness after death. Others argue they might represent access to information stored in the universal field of consciousness rather than personal survival. The question remains beautifully open, inviting you to consider possibilities that transform everything you thought you knew about what it means to be human. But you drift deeper now, feeling the boundaries between self and cosmos becoming increasingly fluid, as if your individual awareness were dissolving into something vast and interconnected that has always been your true nature. The phenomenon of terminal lucidity, where individuals with severe dementia suddenly regain clarity shortly before death, challenges conventional understanding of consciousness as a product of brain function. If awareness depends entirely on neural activity, how can minds that have been severely impaired by neurological damage suddenly become clear and coherent? Some researchers suggest that consciousness might exist independently of brain function, with the dying process temporarily removing barriers that normally filter universal awareness down to individual experience. The implications extend beyond individual survival, pointing toward a model of consciousness that transcends the boundaries of physical death. Ancient traditions have long taught that consciousness continues after bodily death, but modern science has generally dismissed these beliefs as wishful thinking. Yet the accumulating evidence from near-death experiences, terminal lucidity, and other phenomena suggests that awareness might indeed operate according to principles that conventional neuroscience cannot explain. You feel yourself suspended in the space between life and death, individual and universal, as if your consciousness was simultaneously deeply personal and cosmically shared. The work of researchers like Dr. Eben Alexander, a neurosurgeon who experienced a profound near-death experience during a coma caused by bacterial meningitis, has provided compelling first-person accounts of consciousness operating independently of brain function. While critics argue that these experiences might result from residual brain activity or psychological factors, the consistency of reports across cultures and throughout history suggests that they might represent genuine glimpses into the nature of consciousness beyond physical death. If awareness can indeed transcend the boundaries of individual brains, what does this mean for your understanding of identity, purpose, and the ultimate meaning of existence? Some propose that individual consciousness might be like a wave on an infinite ocean, temporarily separate but never truly isolated from the universal awareness from which it arises. Others suggest that consciousness might exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, with physical death representing a transition rather than an ending. The mathematics of quantum mechanics allow for such possibilities, describing reality as fundamentally interconnected and non-local. The question hovers in the space between scientific materialism and mystical insight. What if your deepest intuitions about the eternal nature of consciousness are more accurate than the reductive explanations offered by conventional science? Some believe that consciousness research is on the verge of a paradigm shift that will revolutionize our understanding of mind, reality, and human potential. Others argue that the mysteries of consciousness will always remain beyond the reach of scientific investigation. The debate continues, but for you, drifting towards sleep in the quiet darkness, the question becomes more immediate. What would it mean to live as if your consciousness truly extends beyond the boundaries of your brain? The night deepens around you, and with it, your sense of connection to something vast and mysterious that science is only beginning to explore. Something that ancient wisdom traditions have always known but modern culture has largely forgotten. As you prepare to surrender to sleep, consider that this nightly journey into unconsciousness might be more than a biological necessity, might be a return to your true nature as awareness itself, temporarily freed from the constraints of individual identity and physical limitation. The research into consciousness as a quantum field suggests that every night, as you drift into dreams, you're participating in something far more profound than neural housekeeping or memory consolidation. You're potentially accessing realms of awareness that exist beyond space and time, connecting with the universal consciousness that underlies all existence. The dreams that visit you, the insights that arise in the liminal space between sleeping and waking, the sense of expanded awareness that sometimes accompanies deep restful of these might be glimpses into your true nature as consciousness itself, temporarily embodied but never truly confined by the boundaries of flesh and bone. Some researchers propose that sleep serves as a natural portal to non-local consciousness, allowing individual awareness to merge temporarily with the universal field from which it arose. Others suggest that dreams might be explorations of parallel realities or communications with other forms of consciousness that exist beyond our ordinary perception. The possibilities are as infinite as consciousness itself, as mysterious as the awareness contemplating these mysteries right now. You feel yourself dissolving into something larger than your individual self, yet somehow more authentically you than your waking identity has ever been. The quantum field of consciousness that might underlie all reality doesn't diminish your uniqueness. It reveals your individuality as a precious and irreplaceable expression of universal awareness, exploring itself through countless perspectives. Your thoughts, your experiences, your very sense of being you, all of these might be the universe coming to know itself through the particular lens of your consciousness, making every moment of awareness a cosmic event of infinite significance. As sleep approaches, you're not losing consciousness, but potentially expanding it. Not shutting down awareness, but opening to realms of experience that transcend the limitations of ordinary perception. The mystery of consciousness remains beautifully unsolved, inviting you to participate in the greatest adventure of all, the universe awakening to its own infinite nature through the miracle of your aware presence. Some believe this understanding will transform human civilization, leading to technologies and insights that seem impossible from our current perspective. Others suggest it will remain forever mysterious, a sacred secret that consciousness keeps about its own true nature. But tonight, as you drift toward sleep, you don't need to solve the mystery, you only need to rest in it, to allow yourself to be carried by the vast intelligence that moves through all things, that breathes through your breathing, that dreams through your dreaming, that knows itself through your knowing. You don't need to understand it all. Just rest. Let the unseen carry you the rest of the way.